Okay, so we are here to do what you were expecting us to do, and what we told you that we're going to do, those of you on Facebook, we told you that we're going to give a proper graphic explanation of the statement that we put out regarding all the brouhaha at the airports. Thank you very much for your time. And how are we going to call this? We call it Paul Adom Otchere in his own doc, and we're going to give a testimony. So this is a testimony editorial or editorial testimony. After that, hopefully, everyone will understand what happened. So here is the editorial montage.
Ghana, we now have freedom. Ghana, land of freedom. Toils of the brave and the sweat of their labors. Toils of the brave which have brought results.
Welcome back to the show. Okay, so I'm sure that you have heard news items and all of that. Tonight, what we want to do is to tell you what happened, and we are confident that the question behind me will be answered positively. Now, what is the question? For what we're going to do over the next 5 minutes, we think that there's a fundamental question that we have to answer, because when you occupy certain positions, whether it's part-time or it's full-time, so long as it's a position of the state, everyone has an obligation to show this. So the question we believe that people want to, the question we should be answering is whether or not there was prudent use of the company resources. And which company are we talking about? We know the company we are talking about. Whether or not there was prudent use of the company resources. And we're going to show that. We're going to show the interventions that were made in the same story that you already know. By the time we are finished, you have all the facts. And as we already said, the Public Affairs Department is competent and they can check the facts. One thing we have to start with is this so-called invoice matter. There's on the social media, I think there was a leakage from the company, a certain invoice bearing my name as an attention to the company and to me. And there's a lot of concern about that. Even genuine people have called us to ask, what is that about? So we're going to explain to you. So what happened was that because of the COVID situation, this process about creating Christmas inspirations at an international airport is the same for every airport in the world. Every year it's done. Every year in Ghana it's been done. Even before Terminal 3, when there was only Terminal 2, inspirations are created at Christmas. So the principle is there. As soon as this principle arrived for the purpose of this period, we were interested as a leadership to be sure that prudent spending was done. And by the time I finish the story, you will see that we were successful in ensuring that spending was prudent. We talk about spending less this year than was spent 5 years ago in 2016. We will show you that. We will show you that not so because we're doing a comparative analysis, but we'll show you that so that we know that when we said we intervened to occasion this invoice was not, we didn't obey this invoice. We didn't use this invoice. I'm going to show you how and why we didn't use the invoice. And people have gone around and talked about the cost of this invoice being the cost of the inspirations. That is totally wrong. Only a person who does not understand the invoice or who has forgotten what it is will make that conclusion. All of us, and I'm sure we all understand what an invoice is. As I said, invoice is just an intention. Invoice from a company is given to another company that this is what we want to do for you. Whether the company will accept the invoice or not is another matter. So this is just an invoice. It's not, it doesn't mean anything. Okay, so people ask the question, why was your name on the invoice? Okay, the name was on the invoice because I requested that I needed to see the invoices that the potential suppliers are sending to the company so that we can intervene by bringing down the cost. Because if we don't see the invoice, all we know is that the company will pay the money. We will not be able to intervene. So let me have a look at the invoice was the question that we asked, so that we can intervene in reducing the price. So were we able to do that? First of all, let's make the point that this invoice was not accepted. Why do we say so? Because this invoice is the one that has a Christmas tree, 4 of it for 84,000. And so people are banding around that a Christmas tree was bought for 84,000. That's untrue. We put out a statement that the Christmas tree was bought for 34,000. In fact, City Online did the story, but that's okay. People did other stories. So this invoice was not used. The reason why the invoice was on was so that we can make an intervention. Okay, so now let's go and see what intervention we made. What intervention did we want to make? We wanted to make an intervention so that there will be prudent use of the company's resources. And we are confident that the company's resources was better and prudently used because of the intervention from the leadership level. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so the invoice has been explained. So this is just an invoice. We didn't use it. We didn't buy it. We worked with Flavors and Arts. We didn't buy their Christmas tree at 84,000. We didn't. So this invoice was not used. So people who put out the invoice, just ignore it. The invoice was never used. Okay, so let's move to this. This is the comparison we are talking about. So this is 2016's figures. Okay, so in 2016, the spending on Christmas inspirations was 126,000 and that. This was at one terminal. This was at just one terminal in 2016. And 2016 is significant because we understand that some of the people who are raising concerns about it are animated by politics, and they are animated therefore by the political positions they take. And that is why we go to 2016, which was a different political arrangement. We all know that December 2016, the NDC had lost the election, but the NDC authority was still running the airport. And this is what happened. The Christmas inspirations, 126,000 cedis was spent 5 years ago. Please remember that it's 5 years ago when they spent 126,000. You can calculate, those of you who are good at financial engineering, you can calculate the rate of inflation and then see if we were spending even the same rate, how much it would have been today. But in actual figures, actual terms, this was 126,000 spent in 2016. And they spent it on one terminal because at that time, the airport had one main terminal, Terminal 2. So this spending is on one terminal. This is 2016, 126,000 spent on one terminal. We are not saying that they did anything wrong in 2016. We believe that the principle that every international airport does Christmas inspirations at the festive season is a correct principle. Some people may think it's wrong, but by and large, it's accepted that every airport must do that. So what they did in 2016 was not wrong. We are trying to show that we came in at the top level to make an intervention so that the question can be answered in the affirmative, that the company's resources was prudently expended on this Christmas inspiration. So please follow me. I'll finish soon. 126,000 cedis was spent on one terminal in 2016. Let's move on. Okay, so this is now 2021. 128,366 is the total amount of money that was spent on two terminals, Terminal 2 and Terminal 3. Because now in 2021, Terminal 3 has arrived. So we have Terminal 2 since 2018 or so, Terminal 2 and Terminal 3. In 2021, Terminal 2 and Terminal 3 spent 128,366. We have not finished the story. So when this came up, this is the critical part of the intervention. We decided that the company, and I have to take you back to 2016, where we write here that this money was totally paid by the company. This 126 was paid out of the company's coffers. All of it, 5 years ago, was paid out of the company's coffers for one terminal. Okay, let's move on. Now, this one is 2021. This was paid for two terminals. We have not yet said whether it's a company's resources or not, and that's the other intervention. So when we arrived at this position, because the leadership was involved, we decided that, well, let us see whether we can get some sponsorship for this. Let's see whether we can get some sponsorship for this. So guess what? We called Ghanaian companies, Ghanaian advertising companies, and one of them, DPP, came up and said that, yes, we'll help you to pay for some of your Christmas inspirations. That has not happened in a very long time, but that happened this time because we wanted to be able to spend prudently. So by the time I finish, you know the actual figure of what was spent on Terminal 1, Terminal 2, for Christmas trees and all the other inspirations. Some people ask the question that what does it mean to say Christmas inspirations? We have not taken them off. You can go to the airport and see it. It's chandeliers, lights, all those things that make the airport beautiful to give us the internationalization that we need at the festive season. That's what we call inspiration. Some people have asked the question, what is inspiration? That's what inspiration is. Tree is tree. Inspiration constitutes many other fixtures, including lights. So that's the point. So 128,366 spent on two terminals, Terminal 2 and Terminal 3. We came in and said that, look, we called in the advertisers and spoke to them and said that, well, you need to help us. So they said they'll pay us some money. We asked for some money, we discussed, and they came to a certain amount of money, and they told their management that amount of money was 50,000 cedis. So the 2021 spending had a sponsorship package. Cash, it's not 50,000 in equipment, in cash. The DPP decided to support us because of the representation we made to them, that they will support us with 50,000 cedis for the purpose of creating the inspirations at Christmas. So what then is the total cost? The total cost is then 128,366 minus 50,000, and that brings us to 78,366. That is the amount of money that was spent in 2021 compared to 2016, 5 years ago. This is two terminals. That was one terminal. This is two terminals. That was one terminal. So viewers and those of you on Facebook, this is the figure of the total spending. It's not what has been bandied around. I've seen a graphic online story says 118 was spent. It's not correct. This is what is correct. And this is correct when you do the math. When you do the total cost, which was 128, minus the sponsorship that we gained for the company, because we didn't want the company to spend all that money. We wanted to insist that there should be prudent management of the company's resources in whatever small situation, because this is a company that has great potential, but because of COVID, this is a company that is having a lot of difficulties. The company is going through a lot of difficulties because of COVID, and everybody knows that airports are the biggest hits. Transportation and all of that are some of the biggest hits from the COVID, and our airports is just recovering before Omicron came. In all of those circumstances, we decided that there has to be a way in which company spending at this season can be done prudently. So we looked at the numbers, look at the figures, and said, why don't we also find advertising? The advertisers also were cash-strapped. They were, because COVID has affected them. But DPP came up and said, we will help you. We'll give you 50,000. So they offered us 50,000 cedis. And the 50,000 cedis was paid directly from the DPP to one of the suppliers. The checks are there. You can have a look at it. It's there. You can go to the airport and demand it. They will give it to you. So 50,000 cedis minus this came up to 78,000. So this is what was spent in 2021, 5 years after the NDC's last spending. The NDC's last spending was in 2016, and that spending was this figure, 126, and it was spent on one terminal, one single terminal cost this. We don't think it's wrong. We're not saying it's excessive. We're just giving you the facts. We're showing you that we came and we had clear instructions from our bosses that, look, this is what you need to do. Go to the airport and make sure that spending is managed, because we're in COVID. Once we rise up after COVID, we can continue to spend the way we spend. But for now, be careful about spending. And so when Christmas inspirations came up, the principle having already been established, we went in to say that let us see the invoice. Let's have a look at the invoice. Send me the invoice. Let me have a look at it. Let's see whether there are other ways in which we can do it. Let's see whether we can talk to the companies to bring their spending down. So the purpose of that intervention, far away from violating the rules of corporate governance, was to make an intervention towards reducing the expenditure of the company. And I'd like to say that again. The intervention of looking at invoices and having invoices sent to me and to look at it and have a direction with the company, far from violating corporate governance, was so that there would be prudent management of the company's resources in a difficult time. And that we were able to achieve, by and large, because the figures showed that we were able to achieve that. We didn't know when we set out that we'll be able to achieve a figure lower than 5 years ago. All we were interested in was look at this year's figure and bring it down as much as we can. If we can't bring it down as much as we want, we will try and find sponsorship for it. And we were able to do both. We were able to bring down the figure. So in this 78,000 cedis that was spent, we got Terminal 2, Terminal 3, and the loans, all inspired by Christmas inspirations, on 78,000, because we were able to raise 50,000 advertisements. This is our story. Not more, not less. This is our story. But you know, in now public life, people who occupy public positions, whether you're a part-time board chairman or whether you're full-time, we understand that there's a great obligation to the general public. There's a higher obligation to the general public than it used to be. And that is why I've taken the time to put out these figures there. So people who want to know the facts and people who are interested in looking at it will see that this is what happened. This is the story. So let me just wrap it up quickly now and go to this one. So we talked about prudent resources. I've discussed the invoice. I've mentioned that invoice is an invoice. It's not a receipt. So invoice is just an intention. This invoice did not stand because we did not accept aspects of the invoice. So we had to use the company for something else other than the tree. So when you see 84,000 on the invoice and you think that we paid 84,000, we didn't. The total payment that we made was 78,000, as you now know. And some people also looked at the invoice, and I heard they said that the invoice was issued in my name. So I asked the company to pay me 84,000 that I will supply the Christmas tree. Far from that. Since then, the company has reported that journalists have been calling them and they have told them the truth. Somehow, when some of them are told the truth, they don't publish it, but they just hear it. So they've called the company has told them the truth. There was even rumor that the company is not registered at the Registrar General. That's not true. They are very registered. They have been working for big banks in Ghana for a very long time. Somehow they have been told that, but people didn't want to publish it. But that's okay. We also will publish the truth, you see. So in Commonwealth Hall, we used to say the truth stands. So this is just an invoice. It's not a bill. And the reason why I wanted to see the invoice was so that we can make an intervention to reduce the company's expenditure. When we set out to do that, we didn't know that we will do better than 5 years ago, but eventually by God's grace we did. And so the invoice aside, this is the fact of 2016 spending. This is the fact of 2021 spending. This is the fact of the sponsorship that was achieved. Therefore, in the final analysis, 978,000 is what was paid for that. This has never happened in the history of the airport for a very long time. We are confident that we did the right thing, and we are happy that those of you who are watching have seen it. A lot of what I've said was already in the information that we put out, but we have been compelled to do this because there are still people who don't understand it. And so this is our story. This is our song. I'd like to end with a quotation from Sir Winston Churchill, and you can check it up and you see it. Churchill told the British people in the height of the Second World War, and everybody was afraid of Hitler, Adolf Hitler, the German Führer, who was the president of the Nazi party and the president of Germany. Everybody was afraid of him. He was conquering the world. He tried to conquer England and he failed. That became his Waterloo, and he lost the Second World War. About Hitler, Churchill said to the English people, the British people, he said, Hitler will do his worst, but we will do our best. Let me repeat that. Churchill said, Hitler will do his worst, but we will do our best. And the best is always better than the worst. So thank you very much for watching. This is the story. This is the song. There's nothing to hide. We are confident that everything that we are doing will be transparent. We are excited that it's a great time. We believe that the all airports in Ghana must be an important symbol for the president's development agenda. We are focused on that, to pay our dues, do our best, leave our name, and leave our mark, and other people will continue because we are taking over from other people, and Ghana will be the greater for it. This is the story. 78,000. Please, bloggers online, remember, the story is this. 78,000 is what was spent, not what the graphic online talked about, 118, what anybody is talking about. This is the correct figure. 78,000 is what was spent. Thank you very much. Here's the montage again. This is our story. This is our song. As for our friend, we'll talk about him after the montage, if we have time. Thank you. This is our story. That was our story, and that is our song. Thank you very much. You can send your questions. Hopefully it's been explained. There are some people who would still have doubts. If you do, you can always contact the company. I think I have Ibrahim Zebela back on my screen, all the way from Cameroon, before we go to the education conversation. That's Ibrahim over there. Ibrahim, are you there? Can you hear me? Maybe they should